It was late that night when I arrived home, drained from a long workday. The house was still, with only the faint hum of the refrigerator breaking the silence. My stepmother, Lisa, had already gone to bed, or at least that's what I assumed. Lisa had always been the life of the party, never hesitating to have a drink, especially when my dad was away on his frequent business trips. She would sometimes drink more than she should, but she was always kind to me, almost like a friend rather than a parental figure. I remember lying down on the couch, still dressed, thinking I'd rest there for a bit before heading upstairs. I was too tired to do anything else. The couch had always been my retreat, where I could relax after a tiring day, surrounded by the comforting feel of the cushions. Before long, I drifted off to sleep. Later, I awoke to a strange feeling. I sensed someone near me, hearing the soft rustling of fabric and catching the lingering scent of perfume in the air. It was Lisa, standing there, swaying slightly, the signs of whatever she had been drinking evident. Her eyes were cloudy and her movements were slow and deliberate. At first, I was confused, unsure of what was happening. Why was she standing over me like that? But before I could speak, she sat down on the edge of the couch, her hand brushing against my arm. Her touch was gentle, lingering longer than it probably should have. I could feel the warmth of her skin against mine, and for a moment I was frozen. She leaned in closer, her breath warm on my neck as she whispered something I couldn't fully understand. That was when I realized she was drunk, more so than I had ever seen her. Her eyes had an unfamiliar intensity, and I felt a mixture of confusion, curiosity, and a hint of fear. "You're such a handsome guy, you know that?" she whispered, her voice low and seductive. Her hand moved from my arm to my chest, tracing circles over the fabric of my shirt. A shiver ran down my spine as I struggled to figure out how to respond. After all, she was my stepmother, but something about her touch, the way she looked at me, felt wrong in a way I couldn't ignore. "Lisa, what are you doing?" I finally managed to ask, my voice thick with sleep and confusion. "Shh," she hushed, her fingers trailing slowly down toward my stomach. "Just relax. You look so tense." I should have gotten up, stopped her then and there, but I didn't. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, or maybe it was because I was still half asleep, my mind foggy from dreams, or maybe it was something else I didn't want to admit to myself. Her hand slipped beneath the hem of my shirt, her fingers warm and soft against my skin. My heart raced, my mind spinning with 1,000 thoughts, yet I couldn't move. Her touch was gentle, almost too gentle, as though she were testing the limits, seeing how far she could go. "You've grown into such a strong, handsome man," she whispered again, her lips dangerously close to my ear. "I've always thought so. You must know that." I could feel her breath against my skin, the intoxicating mix of alcohol and perfume filling my senses. Everything about this felt wrong, but there was something about the situation that kept me rooted in place. Perhaps it was the forbidden nature of it, the taboo of what was happening, or maybe it was just the way her hands felt on my skin, soft and inviting. Before I realized it, she had moved closer, her body lightly pressed against mine. I could feel the warmth of her through the thin fabric of her nightgown, her curves soft and inviting. My pulse quickened as she leaned in, her lips brushing against my neck, sending a jolt of electricity through my body. "You don't have to say anything," she whispered, her lips moving slowly against my skin. "Just let me take care of you." I knew I should stop her. I knew this was crossing a line that could never be uncrossed. But the way she touched me, the way she made me feel, clouded my thoughts. Every rational thought slipped away as her hands moved lower, her touch growing more persistent. Her lips found mine, and before I knew it, we were kissing. It started gently, cautiously, but soon deepened, the heat between us rising with each passing second. My hands, almost of their own accord, moved to her waist, pulling her closer as our bodies pressed together. The world around us seemed to vanish, and all that mattered was the way she made me feel. Her hands roamed over my body, exploring every inch of me, and I couldn't help but respond. My own hands moved over her, feeling the softness of her skin beneath my fingertips. We were lost in the moment, consumed by the heat of it all. Then, suddenly, she pulled away, her breathing heavy, her eyes wide with a mix of desire and something else, something that looked a lot like guilt. "I shouldn't be doing this," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "This is wrong." She suddenly stood up, her body swaying slightly as she struggled to regain her balance. I sat up as well, my thoughts still spinning from everything that had just unfolded. I was at a loss for words, unsure of how to respond. A part of me wanted to reach for her, to assure her that everything was fine, that I wanted this just as much. But the logical side of my brain, the part that had been silent up until now, was now shouting at me to let her go. "I'm sorry," she muttered, her fingers trembling as she nervously smoothed the fabric of her nightgown. "I've had too much to drink. I never meant for this to happen." And just like that, she was gone, hurrying up the stairs to her bedroom, leaving me sitting there alone in the darkness. My heart was still racing, my thoughts tangled in the aftermath of what had just taken place. I remained there for what felt like an eternity, trying to make sense of everything. What had just transpired between us? Why hadn't I stopped her? And more than anything, what was going to happen now? One thing was clear, things between us would never be the same. But whether that was for the better or worse, I couldn't yet tell. The following morning, Lisa avoided me entirely. She didn't mention what had happened, didn't even meet my gaze. It was as if she was pretending that nothing had occurred at all. But the tension between us was unmistakable, lingering in the air like a heavy mist. I couldn't stop replaying it in my mind, the way she had touched me, the way she had kissed me. No matter how hard I tried to push those thoughts aside, they kept creeping back in, making it impossible to concentrate on anything else. As the days passed, the strain between us only intensified. Whenever we were in the same space, I could feel her watching me, just as I knew she could feel my gaze on her. We never spoke about it, but the unspoken words hung between us like a ticking time bomb, just waiting for the inevitable explosion. And then one night, it finally happened. Lisa had been drinking again, not as much as before, but enough to make her a little more daring, a little less hesitant. She approached me as I sat on the couch, just as she had that first night. But this time, there was no reluctance in her steps. "I can't stop thinking about that night," she admitted, her voice so soft it was barely audible. "Can you?" I lifted my head, my pulse hammering in my chest. I understood what she was asking, what she wanted, and this time I wouldn't let her leave without saying anything. I reached for her, pulling her down onto the couch beside me. This time, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. We both knew exactly what we wanted, and this time, nothing was going to stop us. As our lips met once again, the world around us vanished, and we became completely lost in each other, in the overwhelming heat and intensity of the moment. There were no second thoughts, no lingering doubts, only the two of us surrendering to the desire that had been simmering between us for so long. From that moment on, everything shifted. Nothing between us would ever be the same again. The tension that had once been an unspoken presence between Lisa and me was now laid bare, raw, and impossible to ignore. We no longer avoided each other, no longer pretended that nothing had changed. Instead, there was an unspoken acknowledgement that something fundamental had altered in our relationship, something neither of us could resist, nor wanted to. Every time my father left on one of his business trips, Lisa and I found ourselves alone in the house together. At first, it was innocent shared dinners, quiet evenings watching television, casual conversations about our day. But every time we were alone, that undeniable pull between us grew stronger, like an invisible force drawing us closer until we were once again lost in each other. Before long, those quiet evenings turned into something far more intense. The kisses became deeper, more urgent. The touches lingered, growing bolder, more intimate. We stopped holding back. We no longer tried to convince ourselves that what we were doing was wrong, and we never discussed it. There was no need. We both understood exactly what this was. Lisa had always carried herself with confidence, always knew how to command a room. But when we were together, there was something different about her, something I seemed to bring out. It was as if I revealed a side of her that no one else had ever seen, a side that was both fearless and vulnerable at the same time. She would look at me with those dark, clouded eyes filled with desire and something else, something deeper, something I couldn't quite grasp. We fell into a pattern, a hidden existence that only the two of us knew about. By day, we played our roles stepmother and stepson, pretending as though nothing had changed. But at night, when the house was silent and the outside world had faded away, everything was different. In those stolen hours, we were no longer bound by the labels society had placed on us. We were just two people caught in something far bigger than ourselves, something beyond our control. The exhilaration of it all was intoxicating. Every stolen moment, every glance we shared, every hushed word exchanged felt like walking a dangerous edge, one we both knew we shouldn't cross. Yet neither of us could resist. Yet that only heightened the thrill. We constantly pushed the limits, testing how far we could go without being discovered. Each day that passed made it increasingly difficult to even consider stopping. However, no matter how much I attempted to push it aside, a part of me was always torn. I was fully aware that what we were doing was wrong. I knew that if my father ever uncovered the truth, it would devastate him, rip our family apart. But at the same time, a part of me simply didn't care. Lisa stirred emotions within me that I had never experienced before, and I wasn't willing to let that go. As the months rolled by, the guilt started creeping in more persistently. There were times when I'd catch myself watching my father during dinner, wondering how he could be so oblivious, so unaware of what was happening right under his nose. I felt like I was leading a double life, constantly on edge, bracing for the moment when everything would collapse. Lisa seemed to pick up on my uneasiness, and one night, after another of our secret meetings, she brought it up. "I know this is complicated," she murmured softly as we lay intertwined on the couch. "But I can't stop. I don't want to stop." I gazed at her, my heart thudding violently in my chest. I didn't want to stop either. But the burden of what we were doing was becoming unbearable. "What if we get caught?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "What if my dad finds out?" She remained silent for a moment, her eyes searching mine before finally responding. "We won't," she assured me. "We'll be careful. We have been careful." I wanted to believe her, desperately wanted to believe that we could keep this hidden forever. But deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth emerged. And then one night, everything changed. As always, it was late. Lisa and I were curled up on the couch, completely lost in each other. We didn't hear the front door open, didn't notice the sound of my father's footsteps as he entered the house earlier than expected from yet another business trip. The instant his eyes landed on us, everything froze. Lisa sprang from the couch, her face drained of color in shock, while I remained seated, paralyzed, my heart pounding in my chest. My father's expression was a chaotic mix of confusion, fury, and disbelief. At first, he said nothing, just stood there, staring at us, struggling to process what he was seeing. What the hell is this?" he finally demanded, his voice shaking with rage. Neither of us could answer. There were no words to explain, nothing that could soften the blow. The truth was laid bare before him, undeniable and irreversible. Lisa attempted to explain, tried to downplay the situation, but my father refused to listen. He erupted, shouting, hurling insults at her, calling her every degrading name he could think of. He couldn't even bring himself to look at me. The betrayal was simply too much. In the days that followed, everything unraveled. My father packed his things and left, abandoning Lisa and me with the wreckage of what we had done. The guilt was crushing, suffocating. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't even glance at my own reflection without drowning in shame. Lisa tried to reassure me, insisting that we would be okay. But I knew better. Nothing would ever be okay again. We had crossed a boundary that could never be undone, and now we had to live with the fallout. As time wore on, the thrill and exhilaration that had once defined our relationship gradually faded, replaced by remorse, regret, and an overwhelming sense of loss. We had destroyed my family, ruined everything for what? A handful of fleeting, forbidden moments? Eventually, Lisa and I drifted apart. The weight of our choices was too heavy for either of us to carry. My father never forgave me, and I couldn't blame him. I had made a terrible mistake, one that I would bear for the rest of my life. In the end, what once seemed so exhilarating, so intoxicating, had turned into nothing more than a tragedy, one that left nothing behind but broken hearts and shattered lives. On the outskirts of a lively metropolis, where neon lights shimmered like distant constellations and the sound of laughter floated through the air, I found myself entangled in an unexpected swirl of emotions. It was a balmy Saturday night, and excitement buzzed all around. My stepson, Jake, had just completed high school, and to commemorate his accomplishment, he was hosting a celebration. I felt an immense sense of pride. He had put in a lot of effort, and tonight was dedicated to happiness and festivity. The house was alive with the aroma of sizzling burgers and the rhythmic beats of music pouring from the speakers. Friends and relatives had gathered in the backyard, where strands of twinkling fairy lights cast an enchanting glow overhead. Among the attendees, Jake's friends, Matt and Tyler, were especially animated, their laughter contagious as they tossed a football back and forth. They were good kids, but something about them tonight felt different. There was an undeniable energy to them, a glint of mischief flickering in their expressions. As the evening unfolded, I caught them stealing glances in my direction, their grins stretching wider as they exchanged quiet jokes between themselves. At first, I dismissed it, assuming it was just harmless fun. However, something about the way their eyes lingered on me sent a shiver down my spine, stirring a curiosity I couldn't quite place. I had chosen to wear a simple sundress that moved effortlessly with the night breeze far from my usual attire, and perhaps that contributed to the sense of exposure I felt under their observant gazes. Their playful taunts became more pronounced as the night went on, their laughter weaving through the air as they dared each other to interact with me. My pulse quickened whenever they edged closer, an unexpected thrill coursing through me. At one point, completely unaware of the underlying tension, Jake proposed an idea. "Let's play truth or dare," he exclaimed, his face alight with amusement. Cheers erupted from the group, and before I could express any reluctance, I found myself seated in a circle with the boys, my heart hammering with a mix of exhilaration and apprehension. Initially, the game remained lighthearted. Truths revealed embarrassing childhood stories, while dares led to goofy antics that had everyone doubled over in laughter. However, when the bottle finally stopped, pointing at me, a surge of adrenaline rushed through my veins. I could feel their eyes locked on me, anticipation flickering within them as they awaited my choice. Taking a steady breath, I spoke with confidence despite the fluttering sensation in my stomach. "Dare," I declared. They exchanged knowing glances before Matt, his grin betraying a hint of something deeper, leaned forward slightly. "I dare you to kiss the person on your left," he challenged, motioning toward Tyler, who was seated beside me. The atmosphere grew thick with anticipation as I hesitated, my mind racing. It was just a game, I reminded myself. Yet, as I turned toward Tyler, I could feel the warmth radiating between us. His striking blue eyes gleamed with mischief, and before I had the chance to second-guess my decision, I leaned in, letting my lips brush lightly against his in a playful, fleeting kiss. Laughter erupted all around. Yet this time, something felt different, charged, electric. Jake's exuberant laughter rang out above the rest, but my attention caught on Tyler's lingering stare, his gaze carrying an intensity that sent a shiver of excitement through me. The game carried on, yet there was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere. The dares became riskier, the truths more candid, and each round peeled back another layer of vulnerability, forging a connection that was impossible to overlook. As the bottle spun once again, this time halting on Jake, he turned his eyes toward me, amusement flickering within them. "Dare," he announced, leaning back with a confidence that sent a ripple of anticipation through the group. A sudden unease prickled at me, not from fear of what he might be tasked with, but from the weight of the moment itself. The dynamic had altered, and I could feel the awareness of the two boys beside me, their gazes fixed on the exchange. Taking a steadying breath, I decided to push the boundary further. "I dare you to kiss your best friend," I challenged, my pulse quickening. Jake's gaze flickered to Matt, who chuckled before nodding. They leaned in, their laughter blending with the soft sound of lips meeting in a brief but playful kiss. It was lighthearted, yet the air between us crackled with an unspoken energy, an undercurrent none of us could ignore. As they pulled back, I couldn't shake the feeling that an invisible line had been crossed. With the game drawing to a close, an undeniable tension lingered, thick with words left unsaid. As the last of the guests trickled out, I realized I was now alone with Jake, Matt, and Tyler, the night wrapping around us in a haze of exhilaration and anticipation. "Hey, can we talk?" Jake asked, his voice quieter, more serious now. Curiosity stirred in my chest as I gave a small nod, following him to a more secluded part of the yard. The distant hum of the party faded, leaving only the rhythmic cadence of our breathing filling the silence. "I know tonight was wild," Jake admitted, his eyes locking onto mine. But I need you to understand it wasn't just a game for us. A shiver ran down my spine at the weight of his words. I glanced toward Matt and Tyler, who stood close, their expressions a blend of expectancy and something deeper, something unspoken. What do you mean? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Matt exhaled, his tone filled with quiet conviction. We've been friends for so long, and tonight, we all felt it. That connection. It was electric, and we don't want it to stop here. Tyler's eyes held mine, sincerity etched into every syllable as he added, we want to see where this leads. My emotions swirled excitement, apprehension, a thrill of the unknown. My voice dropped to a whisper. What exactly are you saying? Matt took a step closer, his presence radiating warmth. We want to explore what's between us, he said, his gaze steady. It wasn't just a game anymore. It almost felt surreal. The air between us grew heavy, charged with an undeniable intensity, as their words surrounded me like a protective cocoon. Conflicted, my mind raced in turmoil. I was the stepmother of their friend, yet the way they gazed at me ignited something deep within. It was forbidden, yet it felt irresistibly right. Before I could gather my thoughts, Jake leaned in once more, his lips grazing mine. This time, it was far from a mere teasing kiss. It brimmed with yearning, passion, and an unspoken promise of something more profound. I surrendered to the moment, my heart pounding as Matt and Tyler inched closer, their presence intensifying the fire that crackled between us. The world around us seemed to dissolve, leaving only the intoxicating excitement of what was unfolding. I deepened the kiss with Jake, all the while aware of Tyler's warmth beside me, the tension thickening with every passing second. As we finally pulled away, breathless and wide-eyed, realization struck we had stepped into unexplored territory. This was no longer just harmless play. It was a complex dance of emotions, an intricate weave of longing and connection none of us had anticipated. What now? I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. We take our time, Matt proposed, his gaze holding an intensity that sent shivers cascading down my spine. Let's discover this together. And with that, we embarked on a new journey, one where the lines between friendship and family blurred beyond recognition. It became an adventure filled with laughter, whispered confessions, and an undercurrent of passion that pulled us closer than I had ever imagined. Every instant was exhilarating, every touch sparking sensations that left us breathless and craving more. Beneath the warm glow of that unforgettable night, I found myself embraced not by one, but by 3 hearts, each beat echoing silent vows of love, joy, and an electrifying voyage ahead. I couldn't wait to see where this path would lead us. As our lips met under the endless sky, I realized this was merely the beginning, a thrilling promise of the unknown, waiting to unravel.